So here's a question that apparently is difficult for drivers in my neighborhood. What do you do at a four-way stop if there are four vehicles that all arrive at the same time?
Don't you have to answer that to even get a license?
Apparently not, at least where I live.
I failed.
It's become a thing. You have no idea, Zach?
No,
You failed.
I failed my first. I failed my first driver's test. I rolled through a stop sign, so I'm gonna.
During the driver's test,
Yeah,
you rolled. California stopped.
California stopped it.
That's
That's
next
stunk.
level dumb.
That stunk.
That
And I
is
had
hysterical.
such a hatred towards the DMV that I was like, you know what? I'm going to show them. I'm not going to go back to there to go get my driver's license because that'll teach them. I don't know what I was thinking in high school. So I went to college as a freshman without a driver's license until that end of that fall semester.
You know, it's funny.
Wow.
When my younger son didn't get it right when he was 16, and it became maybe it was a post-COVID thing. And Craig, your daughter's a little bit younger. Like, it felt like when I was in high school, like, oh my God, I couldn't wait to get my learner's permit. And as soon as I turned 16, I was getting my license. And these days it feels like a lot of kids are totally willing to, if I get it, fine. If I don't get it, fine.
100%. I turned 16, did not go to school that morning, took the test, got my license, went to school. Daughter turned 16 and is like, well, maybe.
I also didn't need I took a bus an hour a day to go to school. Hour there, hour back. So it's like I didn't need a license. And then when you go to college and some people have real IDs, some people have fake IDs, and you have no ID.
What?
Surprise. But at least I didn't have a fake one.
That's true. I guess you didn't.
I just didn't have any.
You just didn't exist.
I just didn't have any.
You learn a lot here on Cardinals Underground.
What about the four-way
So what do you do? Vehicle, you're at a four-way stop.
I didn't mean to bring it back to me. We just said I can't do this.
You do not live in my neighborhood, but people like you are the reason why I have difficulty in my neighborhood when there's a four-way stop and everyone just either all goes at the same time or you're sitting there for like a minute.
I slowly start to move up.
That's what? You're supposed to yield to the person to your right.
Yes.
So if you just keep on yielding, everyone keeps.
If you're the first one there, you go.
True.
If everyone arrives at the same time,
You yield to the right.
What are the odds that everyone arrives there at the same time?
Jesus.
Apparently in my neighborhood, it happens more times than you like to think.
So were you just kind of like a standstill? Like everyone's like a standoff rather?
I become more patient because
You don't trust people running into you.
That's fair.
How are you going to bring this back to football?
I have no idea.
Well, can I actually go back to last week's podcast? Because you talked about people backing into their spots.
Yeah.
I actually have a story. Yesterday, I was driving into my apartment complex, and like the thing needs to scan your from the windshield to like make sure that you're actually a resident for the gate to open up.
You have a fancy security system.
Something like that.
Big baller.
But the person in front of me, his was not scanning. And it detected mine from behind, so it scanned. It opened up. He waved to me. He saw I was behind him. He then drives in right away, turns back. So my car is underneath when the thing's about to come down, and it starts beeping because it's not able to come down. And the guy's just reversing into his spot, and I had other cars behind me that were honking, and I got the thing set off. So all I could think about was this podcast of people backing into their spots, and I also have a problem with it, Darren.
Thank you. I rest my case.
Bottom line is people need to learn how to drive, and that includes learning how to park. And that's why, at least in my neighborhood, we're getting a stoplight put in this four-way stop. So too difficult to understand in my neighborhood, apparently. But what is not difficult to understand, something that dropped on azcardinals.com post last week's podcast. Let me read it to you, Zach.
Please do.
Mike LaFleur learns on... Excuse me, let me do that again.
Edit that out.
I don't. You can keep that in there, Cody. I don't mean like make the guy who writes the headlines not know what he's doing. So let me read it properly how it was intended.
Yes.
Mike LaFleur leans into authenticity to energize Cardinals. It's a fine article written by Darren Urban.
Thank you very much. It turned out well. I think we did. Hopefully, I was able to shine a little bit of light on the new head coach. And if you haven't read it, please go to azcardinals.com and read it. But, I think the one thing I got for sure is the same thing we've been hearing all the time, which is his positivity and the way he kind of goes about things has energized the players. Now, again, we'll see what that looks like when we actually get to the season. But as of now, it's a really good sign, because every player I was talking to, I mean, what was the Michael Wilson quote? I could go on for 2 or 3 minutes raving about the guy. So I think that's basically how everybody thinks.
The LaFleur quote to you, Darren, quote, "I'm not smart enough to lie and be fake. A lot of the positive feedback I have gotten throughout my career is you keep it real." And even in the short time that we've been in contact with LaFleur, either on the field or just around the facility, you get that authenticity, I think.
Yeah, the on the record and off the record conversations they're good. They're good with the head coach. He's very aware of, this new opportunity and the excitement that it brings, but he's also aware that now he's kind of sitting in the big seat for the first time. And with that comes a lot of challenges, a lot of excitement, a lot of learning that will take place throughout the year. It's great. Jeremy Chen, one of our photographers, has been taking a lot of photos throughout throughout OTAs, and a lot of the guys are wearing visors, and I think you could see the reflection of Mike LaFleur in the huddle and the way that he talks to some of the guys, and you kind of could feel that energy through those photos. And that's what excites me, because when you are in that huddle for the first time and you have all 90 players that are looking at you, you have to make an impression. And I think so far, Mike LaFleur has done exactly that.
You mentioned challenges. Is quarterback a challenge?
Sure feels like it right now. I mean, this is as good a time as any to talk about it, for sure. I mean, look, for those who are not hearing, I mean, the Jacoby Brissett thing is unresolved at this point. ESPN had a report out late last week that said that the Brissett and the Cardinals were, quote, significantly, unquote, apart in how they want to get this contract figured out. Again, we don't know what that means. We don't know what Jacoby Brissett would like to have in terms of his contract. We don't know what the Cardinals are willing to do. So we don't know.
We think what Jacoby would like.
Do we, though?
According to reports.
What reports? I've seen no reports over numbers. I've heard speculation all over the place. There's no reports.
The original Ian Rappaport report mentioned a reworked contract.
Well, yeah. No, I know it's a reworked contract, but I'm talking about to what level.
That is fair.
Does he want
starters money, and what does starters money mean?
Well, again, yeah. He's got a $1.9 million salary coming. If he makes it to the regular season, I think the total money he would get paid is just under $5 million. And again, as repeating this, if you're on the roster through on the first week of the season as a veteran, you would have your entire contract guaranteed at that point. So he would get about $5 million. Does he want $10 million instead? Does he want Kirk Cousins $20 million? Like that, we don't know.
Does he want years added to his deal? That's part of the reworked contract, you would think. But again, he's not said anything.
If I had to speculate, this would be strictly about what he's getting paid this year. I don't necessarily think he'd be looking for more money or more years. That's just pure speculation on my part. But again, since we don't know, like I don't know what that means. Are they significantly apart because the Cardinals are like, no, we're going to pay you $5 million this year because we don't know how this quarterback thing is going to play out? Is he saying I want 20? Is he saying just bump me to 10? Is he saying just guarantee me what I already have coming? I'm guessing that's probably not it. But I don't know.
Going back to the question then, is this a challenge for a head coach, more specifically a first-time head coach? It's voluntary, but every single availability, this gets brought up to the point where I don't think it's an issue. At least for me, it's not an issue. It becomes an issue when you have to be here, and then it reaches a different stage. But it seems to me more of an annoyance, at least right now, at least publicly. I don't know what's happening behind the scenes amongst the coaches and the players, but to me, it's just a storyline that you would hope would not be there.
Yeah, you don't. Especially because as of late, this team has not really run into a lot of players with contract issues, and that hasn't been brought to light recently. So if this is the case, that definitely adds an element that has not been there in the past handful of years, which is good that it hasn't happened, but now it gives a challenge for the fact that it is taking place. But in terms of what does it actually do for Mike LaFleur, he was asked about it and said, like, it doesn't really do much because you already have Gardner Minshew in there. You have Carson Beck going into the system. You have Keaton Slovis. And in Jacoby Brissett's case, if he does come back and the Cardinals are able to figure out whatever they need to figure out, and he's on the field by mandatory mini camp or on the field by training camp, if that does all happen, Jacoby Brissett's played a lot of football and you could get thrown right back into the fire. And I think if there's any quarterback, veteran quarterback that is in the league that kind of fits the potential starter, likely backup role that could excel at that, it is Jacoby Brissett at learning the system.
I still believe this gets resolved sooner rather than later. But until then, it certainly brought up a lot of conversation, speculation. And I know, Darren, you get asked about it a lot in the mailbag as far as Carson Beck is concerned and whether this opens the door more for perhaps the Cardinals' third-round pick to see the field sooner rather than later.
Before we get to that, you mentioned the mailbag. I do think it's a great place to put in there. We would like to start doing a question of the week here on the podcast. If you want to,
it's a wonderful idea. By the way,
I think it's a wonderful idea. It's a great idea. Thanks, Danny, who's still on assignment. So if you want to send in a question for the podcast to ask Darren at cardinals.nfl.net, that's ask Darren at cardinals.nfl.net. We will take a look at those every week and we'll answer. We could end up answering more than one, and we'll see how many we get, but I think it's a great idea. It can kind of go with the mailbag. You mentioned the mailbag though, and the question about that's where almost all the questions were this week, about some version of Beck, and I'm sure it's because of the Brissett news coming out. But nothing's really changed for me with Carson Beck. Like, I'm still thinking the same thing. Like, I still think I would like to see Jacoby Brissett start the season. If you play Carson Beck, to me, there's no set timeline. I want to see what it looks like in terms of what the Cardinals look like. And I still continue to say, I'm not sure. I don't care what happens this year. I don't care how many games he plays, even if it's all 17. I'm not 100% sure that you know for sure if Beck is your guy or not after just one season, even if he plays every game. And to the extent that if you have a chance at a potential franchise quarterback at the top of next year's draft next year, that you would pass on that guy.
Because he or whomever is the quarterback could play you out of that potential possibility because you're sitting there at 15, 19, 22.
Maybe. But again, that's you would think that with maybe Brissett. You're thinking less of that with Carson Beck. But again, like, somebody's got to play quarter. You still got to play the games. You're still going to try and win.
And that's
like this is where I get really screwy with this right now, is because we're sitting here in May talking about, essentially, people want to talk about tanking, and they're not going to tank. What are we doing?
That's where I'm at on this, because you hear or you read, when is the right time for Carson Beck to see the field? And I don't understand the right time. I get it as a conversation amongst the fans, amongst the media. It's not a conversation, at least I don't believe it's a conversation that the coaching staff is having. Because of what you said, Darren, they operate as in the now. Week one. How do you win week one? And if Carson Beck does beat out Jacoby and Gardner and Keaton, so be it. He starts week one.
Russell Wilson, the sequel.
Perfect example.
I know. I'm good at those.
And he, by the way, he made his NFL debut against the Arizona Cardinals.
I was there.
Well, you've been everywhere.
Yeah, that's true.
Big time.
But to predict or to say this is a good spot in the schedule and it's week 4 or it's week 8 or it's at home or it's on the road, that's the part I struggle with, because coaches and players, they don't think like that. Maybe that's the difference between that room versus the other room.
Go tell Trey McBride that Carson Beck's going to start week 12 because you guys are 0-11. Like that, you can't tell the guys that. They don't believe that. And I think it goes back to it. And I understand, like, we obviously we're here we work for the team. But if you look even at the national landscape, last year the talk was about how the Cardinals are not far away. And yes, the season did not go the way that anybody expected for it to go. And I understand that. The pieces, at least on offense, really have not changed much. Instead, the spotlight actually is proven to be brighter for guys like Michael Wilson and for Trey McBride to take that next step in his career to reach that near unanimous all-pro selection. So they're able to figure it out on offense and they're able to stay healthy. This is a really dynamic unit, and I know it always comes down to whoever the quarterback is going to be. Jacoby Brissett is a quality quarterback. I'm not saying he's an elite franchise guy, but he's a quality quarterback. Carson Beck has a lot of experience in college, which is very different than experience in the league, but it's not like he is unfamiliar with what it's like, the pressure to be a quarterback. What it comes down to is that quarterback, are they going to step up to the plate in the way that you hope that the rest of the guys are also going to? And the defense, are they going to be able to stay healthy and pick up the slack that they were not able to last season? That's what it comes down to. I was listening to Maurice Jones-Drew was talking about Jeremiah Love and his impact that he could potentially have on his show with Steve Smith, the 89 show that I'm pretty sure they do underneath the Underdog family. And he was talking about it, and he just said, like, this is a really good team. And he was with Mike LaFleur in Los Angeles, and he was saying, like, this guy's smart, and if there's anybody that I think could figure it out, it's him. So, yeah, I understand right now the storyline. It's great. Talk about Carson Beck. Where could he possibly play? It's the fun storyline to talk about now. But for the guys in the locker room, they're talking about winning.
I would just like to see how this plays itself out, but that doesn't sell newspapers when they sold newspapers.
Nope. Way back in the day.
Didn't get you your clicks.
So, and to that part, I get it. It just seems to be that noise has only grown louder because of who's not here during the voluntary session of the offseason.
Look, I'm going to say this, especially this time of year. The quarterback's always going to be the big story because it's the easiest one to talk about, and because that quarterback has, I mean, what's the biggest story in Baltimore? It's Lamar Jackson. What's the biggest story in Cincinnati? Joe Burrow. The biggest story here every offseason was Kyler, when we were blessed so much to have the one time he talked in the offseason. That was going to be the big story. That they don't have a quarterback right now. I mean, the quarterback is still the big story, but now that's the part of the story. So, like, in itself, the quarterback was always going to be the story. It's just a question of what kind of story it is. You know, if Jacoby Brissett was here, we wouldn't have the portion of the story about him talking about his contract or wanting a different contract, but the quarterback would still be a story. We would still be having the conversation. When does Carson Beck play? Is it Jacoby over Gardner Minshew? Could Minshew pass? Like, all those things, that would still be the story. It's just, this is how the story is going right now because Jacoby isn't around right now. And, you know, again, we'll see what happens. You know, the big one, and we'll have another podcast before we get to them, but, like, the big one will be, what does it look like during mandatory minicamp? Is Jacoby Brissett here? What happens in training camp? Just like you said before, like, if Carson Beck outplays everybody in training camp like Russell Wilson did and he becomes a starter, great. But, like, everybody's saying, well, when's Carson Beck going to play? Well, what happens if, you know, there's this assumption, well, you have to put him in games to know. Now, I fully believe Carson Beck is going to get a chance to play, and I believe he'll play well enough in practice to earn that chance at some point. But you don't know. I mean, what happens if they watch him in practice? You're like, we can't put him out there. He's not where what we're seeing in practice doesn't work. What's the point of putting him out there? And if you're a coach and you see a guy and he's not ready in practice, I don't care what the fans think or whatever. Like, you can't just put him out there and let him get destroyed. So what? That you have, like, a public showing of what you're already seeing on the practice field? That doesn't make sense to me either. There's so many nuanced parts to this that it's just, to kind of the Zach's point, like you can't. How do you know right now? You don't know. You don't know what it's going to look like. You don't know. You don't know what these teams are going to look like during the season. You don't know what injuries are going to happen. Okay, maybe it looks smart to put on Carson Beck right now, but if like every single one of the Cardinals' offensive linemen get hurt, is that who you want to put out there? Are you really getting a true sense of who he is? I don't know.
Look, this team spent the first week of OTAs just working on getting into a huddle. I don't think that 3 weeks later the conversation is a matter of when's the third-round draft pick going to actually play in games. They have a lot of other things that they need to figure out right now, including what are they going to do with Jacoby Brissett before they could even think about down the line in the schedule. I asked Coach LaFleur about the schedule when he saw it and his reaction to it, and he said he truthfully could care less. And I'm not saying that I necessarily believe that, because I definitely believe.
Did he say he could care less or couldn't care less? Because technically, if he said he could care less, that means he could indeed care less. But if he couldn't care less,
he was talking about
he's at the very bottom of caring.
Well, he was talking about his family needing tickets, so maybe he does care a little bit. But he was talking about that and how right now he can't look at that type of stuff because they're focused on OTAs. So I do believe that right now this isn't a conversation of when can Carson Beck play on the schedule.
If a player is not on the field during the regular season, there's a reason. It means they have not earned the right to be on the field. That's how I always understood, because to your point, Darren, coaches aren't going to put someone out there just for the sake of putting them out there.
I will say this. Do I think Josh Rosen was ready to play and be a starter in the NFL when he went in? No. But in that case, Sam Bradford was playing so poorly that it was worth the switch. I do not think the Cardinals are going to be in a position like that. I do not think that whether it's, and I'm thinking it's going to be Brissett. And again, did he win enough? No, last year, but I thought Jacoby Brissett played some decent football. Do I think Brissett will play so poorly that you're going to put him in? I mean, in some ways, some of this talk, it reminds me of back in 2004, the New York Giants came to Sun Devil Stadium to play the Cardinals, and they were 6-3. And I'm watching this game, and at this point, I'm still working for the East Valley Tribune. And a quarterback named Kurt Warner was playing for the Giants, and they were in playoff position. Now, Bertrand Berry made Kurt's life miserable that day, sacked him 4 times. The Giants ended up losing 17-10 to the Cardinals. And then the next day, they announced that Eli Manning, the rookie, was now going to be the starting quarterback. And Kurt was not wrong when he said, we're 6-4. I'm a little surprised they're doing this, but whatever. Kurt was also an excellent mentor and did what he needed to do. But I do think it is possible. I think the Giants ended up 6-10 that season, so they lost every start that Eli had. Now, that's a way different thing. Eli Manning was the first overall pick, so I guess teams will do that sometimes. And the Giants realized they probably weren't going to go very far with Kurt Warner at the helm. And there's a lot there, too. We could get into that a lot because the Giants also were not willing to do what Ken Wisenhunt later did with the Cardinals, which was let his offense be what fit Kurt Warner the best rather than how he wanted to run it. The Giants weren't willing to run that offense, and that offense just didn't fit Kurt very well. But anyways.
It goes back to the nuance part of it.
It's always nuance.
And it goes back to, as I mentioned, the article that you wrote on Mike LaFleur on azcardinals.com about the belief that players who have been around LaFleur, like a Kendrick Bourne, when it comes to the quarterback position, that there is trust that Mike knows what he's doing and will figure it out. And the story that I believe it was either Kendrick told you or Mike told you about,
mentioned it to me,
was 2017, when at the time LaFleur was on Kyle Shanahan's staff and
wide receivers coach.
They didn't have a quarterback until they found Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, they did have a quarterback. But
they had a quarterback.
It was C.J. Beathard, by the way, because I had to go back and look it up.
The reason it came up was I was talking to Mike LaFleur about how much Kendrick Bourne loves playing for him, and the fact that, and we all remember this, when Kendrick Bourne first signed, he said in his press conference, the quarterback thing doesn't make a difference to me because I believe Mike LaFleur will figure it out. And I mentioned it to Mike LaFleur and that whole thing. And Mike LaFleur wasn't as detailed, but he did say Kendrick's been there before. We didn't have a quarterback in 2017, and then we did. So I went back and looked it up, and I had forgotten that not only I knew they had traded for Jimmy Garoppolo. What I forgot was they were 2 months into the season before they did.
And 0-8.
So, and I'm not saying the Cardinals are going to go out and necessarily trade for a quarterback mid-season or whatever it might be, but again, the point being, you don't know how things are going to turn out. And maybe in this case it is Carson Beck coming in and you realize you got that guy. I don't know. Or maybe it is, wow, Jacoby Brissett completely fits this offense so well, and all of a sudden it's like pinball type thing. As long as we get the defense going, there is not a better offense for Jacoby Brissett to be in than what Mike LaFleur is trying to run. Now, I don't know if that's the case, but let me tell you something. If they get Jacoby Brissett here and things start clicking, everybody's mindset can change quickly.
That's what also happened the year before when Kendrick Bourne was in New England with Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett was the starter when Drake May was still the backup, and you didn't know when you were going to play Drake May. Jacoby Brissett, they waited, for Drake May till they felt that he was ready, and they weren't really winning games. And then Drake May slid into the starting spot, and he hasn't lost it since. So
the only problem I have, and you're not wrong, and just
clip
like
that, please.
and obviously I brought up the Kurt Warner thing. The problem with those arguments is those dudes were top 3 picks. Drake May was always going to be the quarterback. It's just a question of when.
I'm more so saying from just being in an offensive meeting room with Jacoby Brissett,
Yes.
where there is a conversation of who the starter is going to be. It's an area that Kendrick Bourne, as a pass catcher, has been in with the uncertainty of who that quarterback is going to end up being going into that season. And then Jacoby Brissett, knowing that he has been in many different quarterback competitions.
So quarterback may or may not be a challenge for Mike LaFleur right now. I think we can all agree that it's not a challenge, and it certainly doesn't fall on Mike LaFleur's plate, but Michael Wilson, Paris Johnson Jr., who gets that extension first? Does one have to be ahead of the other? Can you do both at the same time? Better to do it now versus later. The 5th-year option has been picked up for Paris, so you have a little bit more time. I guess you got time with both of them because you don't have to do anything right
you don't
now.
have to.
Probably more beneficial, certainly from the team to do it, and maybe even for the player as well, depending on.
I look at the Michael Wilson situation like I looked at Trey McBride last year. You do not want to get into him in the final year of his contract. I don't think that would be a smart thing to do unless. And you don't know for the couple of times Monty Ossenford has talked about Michael Wilson, he's talked about how much he fits what they're doing and they want him around long term. So I anticipate an extension. And could it happen? Could it be announced during training camp? Sure, it could. And we still got a couple weeks here. Michael Wilson was basically saying he doesn't want to be thinking about it once we get to training camp or the season. I forget exactly which one it was. Maybe, and it's a season you have a little bit more time. You'd like to get both those things done, but to me, the Michael Wilson piece, when you talk about getting to the final year of a contract, I think that's something. And for me, I would think Michael Wilson would be a guy that would like to get something done because as awesome as he was for the final 12 games last year, that's the first year since he was in high school that he was healthy the whole year. You don't know what the offense is going to look like. You want to strike when the iron is hot and get your money. And maybe it's not going to be top 10 in the league necessarily, but it's going to be a good deal, I would think.
The one thing I did appreciate about Michael Wilson, and he's as smart as they come, especially when it comes to standing in front of a microphone and what to say. I did appreciate how he said, if this doesn't get figured out, I'm still going to be showing up with a smile on my face, ready to work and trying to prove what I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that was basically what I was saying about proving what he's worth still out there on the field. He said this isn't something that he wants to worry about right now. And I appreciate, hearing a guy say that. A lot of times they'll just say, I leave this to my agent and that's that. But when Michael said that, he just wants to come in and smile on his face and come into work and show what he could do, I did appreciate that.
I will say to that, though, I do appreciate it, and I think it was done with genuineness in his heart.
Mm-hmm.
But if he doesn't get a contract extension, of course he's going to be trying to kick ass. He's trying to make sure he gets a giant contract at the end of the year.
Well, you would do that anyway. You want to show what your contract's worth.
Well, yes, and I think in Michael's case that he would be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess my point is, you're like, if he doesn't get the contract, he'll be okay. Well, he's got a different kind of motivation if he doesn't get the contract.
That's
and
fair.
Potentially a more important one.
As long as he puts yards and touchdowns up on the stat sheet. That's what I think he cares about.
Zach Gershman analysis right there.
That's why you guys brought me in.
Well, never mind.
You should have said
There
it.
was a door that I could have walked through, but I wasn't going to do it because I have too much appreciation for what Zach does on a day-to-day basis.
See, I even wanted to hear it.
This is.
I even wanted to hear it.
I do not disagree with either one of you when it comes to Michael Wilson. Let me play the other side, both the player and the team side. The player side is, I'm going to bet on myself, do it for an entire year, and maybe earn a larger deal. Team side, you did it for 12 games. Can you do it again? And then we'll sign you. I mean, there's.
So are you saying? I mean, could that happen? I think it could happen. Do I think it? I think you're taking a big risk if you're the Cardinals if you do that. Again, some of this has to do with the money. Like, I don't know what Michael might be asking for or what the Cardinals might be willing. Unless we know the numbers, it's really hard to make a judgment call like that. You know, are you willing, if you're the Cardinals, if he has a big year, are you willing to put the franchise tag on him? That's a lot of money for a wide receiver. A lot of money. That doesn't track. And you know what else doesn't track? It doesn't track how Monty's been operating. He's been giving extensions to a lot of different players. And it just makes, to me, a lot of sense. An extension from Michael Wilson in particular makes a lot of sense to me. To Paris, too. But I do think Paris is going to be looking to be one of the highest paid left tackles in the league, which is a lot of money, as opposed to, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm not sure you have to pay Michael Wilson top of the market and still have him be happy with a new deal.
That's fair. And you want to keep your homegrown talent in-house. You invested in these players as far as a draft pick is concerned, and you want them to stick around because of what they mean on the field first and foremost, but also off the field as well. So again, it's just another way of thinking, whether you're the player and think you can get more and the team saying, well, we don't want to pay too much because you haven't shown enough. But in the case of Michael, though, I think stats aside, it's not so much the statistics, but the blocking and the other stuff that doesn't show up on a stat sheet, to where I think the team realizes what they have in him, even if he's not putting up 1,000 yards in 2026.
At the end of the day, look, I look at it as just rewarding them, you know, that you do it the right way. It goes back to Monty's quote from the Combine of him saying Michael Wilson's everything we're all about. Because when you're doing it the right way, Paris Johnson Jr. is the same way. I look at, you talk about the extensions. You look at some of the guys that have gotten those contract extensions. Budda Baker, James Conner, Yale DeFroholt. Like, these are guys. Zaven Collins. And the outside of Zaven, even though Zaven, you know, deserved to get that contract extension, the other guys were all wearing the Captain C on their chest. So they embodied what this front office was looking for in their players. So they're going to reward them, and they're going to say, just like we're talking about kind of the homegrown talent, look what we are building here. You can get rewarded. You could earn that respect from your teammates, and you also earn that respect from the front office if you do the right things and do a good job.
And I would say, there's my last thing on the Michael Wilson thing. To me, Michael Wilson they always were going to want to try and get into an extension. The only thing that's really changed in my head is how much money he's going to want to get paid and how much money he deserves to get paid. I think they would have tried to keep him even if he would have had more of a Michael Wilson statistical output from those first 2 years, because of all the things you said, because of how good he is in the locker room, because of how good he is with some of the intangible stuff that doesn't get measured, the blocking, the attitude, all that stuff. I think they were always going to try and keep him. The difference is now when he put up the numbers, he's going to be looking for a lot more actual money, and that's what you got to get figured out. And again, nobody's told me that. That's just my interpretation of the situation.
And then we can also add the speaking part. because there is no one better than that Cardinals locker room for Darren Urban and you, Zach Gershman, when it comes to azcardinals.com.
Yeah, Michael's awesome. Soundbite machine.
Another homegrown talents. I found this interesting because we're in the off season and it's about a lot of lists. The list put together by The Athletic. Walter Nolen found himself on a list of 2025 first rounders who need big seasons in 2026. I don't know how you define big. I understand why Walter made the list. I don't know if he needs a big season. I would just like him to be on the field more than the 6 games that he was in last season.
Health is what matters with him. He showed that he could do it. It was impressive. Even in that first game, Monday Night Football, spotlight's on you. What are you going to do? And the fact that he was able to get a sack and swat away a football, like he really did perform well when he was out there on the field. And then the game against the Jaguars, he's able to recover that fumble and lunge out and score a touchdown. Like it was impressive to see what he was able to do. He has that knee injury. He's got to get that healthy. And by the time he is out there, yeah, you expect for a first-round pick, no matter where they're drafted, to contribute come game day. So, yes, he does need a big second season, but he does need a healthy second season at that.
Big in terms of, like, production, because what we did see...
Presence.
So big as far as you need big, meaning twice as many games played than his rookie year. I would even say he needs to be on the field at least 14 games. That would be my hope. Like, I'm sure he would like to be on the field all 17 games, but play that position along the line of scrimmage, you are going to get bumped around a lot. But yeah, 6 games is not nearly enough.
Yeah, well, I think he will, by being on the field, I believe he will pop up on the stat sheet. He's just too good to not pop up on the stat sheet. But I think it just comes down to his presence and his availability, and more than just ability, because I think his ability is already really solid. It's just a matter of getting on the field, staying on the field, and getting to the quarterback. I know, Darren, Zach Gershman analysis 2.0 right there.
I would never insult you, Zach.
What do we need to rewind back 5 minutes? I know we're on YouTube. We could go back.
To remind the Bird Gang on what Walter Nolen did his rookie year in 6 games: 5 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits, 2 sacks, and the aforementioned fumble recovery he returned for a touchdown. Still not sure why that was not an interception, but it was a fumble recovery. Ball never hit the ground, but details.
That is going deep in the weeds for no good reason. Thanks, Craig.
I'm Walter Nolen to me is one of those players, and for me a year ago was B.J. Ojulari, but it's that player that you saw something in him, brief as it was. Heck, it even goes back to what he did in college, and you just didn't see him the entire offseason because he missed training camp with a calf strain in the first 7 games. But just the potential to have that kind of a presence along the defensive line that has undergone a lot of changes since Monty has been the general manager. Can you find something in there in a first-round draft pick that I wouldn't say solidify, but can help anchor that side of the ball?
That's what you need. You need him to be out there, Craig. Like that's what it comes down to.
I think you need a lot of people out there. I mean, when we start talking about this defense, we think about the high picks that have been used to get guys in. Start talking about all these guys that are, let's say, 4th round and earlier, that were picked, that really are needed to play big roles. Rabbit, Taylor Demerson, Darius Robinson, B.J. Ojulari, Walter Nolen,
Max
Melton,
Will Johnson.
I wouldn't put Garrett Williams on that list because I think he's already solidified himself.
Yes.
You're just not going to see him on the field for some points of this season. Hopefully he's back, but who knows with an Achilles
But again,
injury.
the point being is, like, this is the guts of these drafts that this team has had. So we talk about all these guys, whether it's Ojulari or Nolen or whatever. Like, now, Do they all need to be? I mean, I would hope Walter Nolen as a first-round pick, assuming he stays healthy, you would think he'd make probably a bigger impact than B.J. Ojulari at this point, whatever. But they all have to make an impact, or at least most of them need to make an impact to get where you want. I liked where Will Johnson was going. I really did. I think Max Melton has a chance to kind of reset himself after these first couple of years, because clearly he was not in a good place in terms of where he was on the depth chart. All that stuff. Darius Robinson, stay healthy. B.J. Ojulari has to get on the field and be able to do some stuff. He hasn't been healthy. The health is a huge thing. I mean, some of it's bad luck, but man, I will say this. The one good thing when I saw Will Johnson, it wasn't like a next level power slam, but watching him elevate and dunk in that Mac Wilson basketball game after all the concerns about his knee, I'm like, okay. That's doable.
He said during OTAs that it feels drastically different than how it did the year before because he was injured. He had that hamstring injury that had him limited during OTAs last year, and I thought he had a really solid rookie season. But to his standards and the conversations I've had with Will in the locker room, I mean, he gave it a C+. Isn't that what he said it was? Right around. So you expect a guy like that who holds himself accountable to want to take that next step. And that's why I would put him in that category of guys that kind of need to take that jump, because in his eyes, it was a matter of getting on the field, which he did a good amount, but still wasn't on the field as much as he would have liked, number one. And number two, there were a lot of learning lessons that came along the way in that rookie season. So I think that's why I would probably put him still in that category of taking that leap.
Not counting this year's or the most recent draft class, but 28 draft picks, and this is a general manager who builds through the drafts. You lay the foundation, and to what we've been talking about here, there are a number of those building blocks on the defensive end that for one reason or another just have not produced, whether because of injury or bad luck. They just haven't been that player. And if you get selected in the first round or the second round or the third round, there's an expectation, like it or not. And the higher you're selected, the higher the expectations. And if you're not meeting those expectations, then there's disappointment. And I want so much for this defense there wasn't a lot of moves defensively, major moves defensively this offseason, because I think a lot about is just the players you have in the building, one, staying healthy, and then two, the phrase player development, which was used late in the season a year ago. Can you get more out of these guys that they haven't hit their ceilings as of yet, even though they're in year 2 or year 3?
Player development is what it comes down to with a lot of the guys on the defensive side of the ball. And it also comes down to players like Cody Simon, taking that year number 2 jump. He learned a lot by getting thrown into the fire with Mac Wilson Sr.'s rib injury that Darren wrote about from the charity basketball event that he did, the community day. And that was good learning lessons for the rookie at the time. But that player development, it does also extend. You're always still learning. So it does still extend from the guys that are first year, second year players. It could go all the way up to the Buda Bakers. How can you help a guy like that reach that next level, if there is a next level, and trying to unlock it to the best that they can?
No question, Larry Fitzgerald reached that next level with the Arizona Cardinals. And I found this interesting on NFL.com. A story, each team's next best Hall of Fame candidate. Now, Fitz doesn't count because he's already going into the Hall of Fame. Darren will be there, and I don't know, maybe up on stage with Fitz since you two
probably
are buddies?
Not.
No, probably not? Okay. They asked who the next potential Arizona Cardinal to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and they suggested Patrick Peterson, who will be eligible in 2029.
To be fair, the article was like every team's next. And I thought it was interesting because if you look at the whole list, not every team has got one where you're like, oh, yeah, that guy will get in the Hall of Fame. I looked at a lot of guys. I'm like, I don't know if that guy's getting in the Hall of Fame. I think Patrick's got a chance. I'm sure he thinks he's got a good chance. We'll see what happens. Because he didn't retire, because he last played in 23, so that makes him eligible on what, 28? 29. I think there's going to be a battle. I don't necessarily see him being a first ballot guy, which is fine. There's lots of Hall of Famers that don't get in first ballot, but there's going to be some battling. And if I recall correctly, there aren't a ton of cornerbacks in the Hall of Fame, relatively speaking. So it's going to be interesting to see who he has to battle with. And I don't know you don't know what the queue is going to look like by then either. Like
who else is up or
Yes.
returning for a second year
Yes.
or a third year. But hey, you're an 8-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. I mean, those are solid credentials that not a lot of players who are already in the Hall of Fame have. But some of it also is what teams did you play on and what were those teams' success? So you're out in front of more eyeballs and having more impactful plays, whether that's meaningful games late in the year or playoff games. But Patrick, I think, has both of that.
Yes, he has all those things. The Hall of Fame is always a fascinating kind of argument. You have to, one of the things, there was a lot of speculation over what is going to happen with the Hall of Fame voting and how it might go going forward. The Belichick thing, him not getting on the first ballot, created a big deal. There is conversations right now with the Hall of Fame going on about what voting might look like. I don't know if it'll stay exactly the same. What I'm curious about is, like right now, I forget how many voters there are, but they make sure they have a voter for every single team, every single franchise. So at least there's one person basically making the argument for every team. And Kent Summers currently is the Cardinals voter. If they were to cut down on the number of voters, would that mean not every team would necessarily be represented? I don't think that's a great idea, because if you're not from a big franchise, big city, or a super popular franchise, who's going to argue for the Cardinals of the world or the Colts of the world or the Jaguars of the world? I believe they still deserve that kind of argument, and you might not have passion to argue for those guys if you're not seeing them on a daily basis.
I think that's fair and a legit concern, because who are those that have seen these players the most? The guys that have been in the press box for all or most of their particular careers. So I would not like that as a potential change to the Hall of Fame voting process.
I don't know what it's going to look like. And again, maybe no changes are going to happen. We'll see what happens. I think that'll happen after the induction or something. I'm not sure what the timeline is before they start looking at next year's class. But I will say that I agree. I mean, I've never been a voter, obviously, but I've heard general stories. They're not allowed to talk about how things go exactly, but just general stories about people having big conversations about this guy or that guy, and it can get not necessarily heated, but there's a lot of conversation, because unfortunately with the NFL, there's not a lot of apples and oranges, and that's part of the issue.
What's the process to get Darren Urban into the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Because there are media members and there are writers that are enshrined in Canton. So, Zach, what do we have to do to make sure At Cards Chatter is inducted? Because then I will be in attendance for that one.
Well, so I heard that you need to drive from Tempe all the way to Canton. When you get to Canton, stand in front of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, raise your hand and say, "I nominate Darren Urban to the Pro Football Hall of Fame."
You know what's funny about that? Not for me, obviously, but I do think you can nominate.
I wasn't joking.
You can nominate any.
That's why you should start driving.
You can actually nominate any player into the initial wave of people. Now they take an immediate vote, and then that pares it down quite a bit. But there's a lot of, and I don't know if it necessarily even has to be a media member. I have to look that up, but it's a fascinating process, which I've learned much more about since Larry Fitzgerald is going into the Hall of Fame. By the way, if you're interested in attending the Hall of Fame festivities on Premier Travel, you can go to Premier Travel on azcardinals.com and look up that travel package.
And then join us, Bird Gang, and have Darren Urban inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame at some point sooner rather than later, because nothing is guaranteed in life, Zach.
As long as you're the one that makes the trip. If Craig's missing for a few days, hopefully he doesn't run into everybody at the four-way stops and everybody is at a standstill. But if he does, I know he's going to turn to the right.
Yeah, just avoid the four-way stops.
When I was in Canton in April, by the way, gas was like $1 cheaper per gallon.
You bring any home? Ship it to you. Ship it back to Tempe.
It'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Not sure if Darren will ever be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but he has our votes here on Cardinals Underground.